So every single year we did. And for Senator Cruz to say that this isn't going to bust the budget at a time of $21 trillion in debt, when we're on track to deficit spend to the tune of $1 trillion a year, he voted to add $2 trillion. And those tax cuts disproportionately will flow to corporations who are already sitting on record piles of cash and the already wealthy in a country that is riven with income inequality unseen since the last Gilded Age. Why? In the days just before and just after that vote, Senator Cruz accepted $120,000 from the political action committees who represent the corporate interests that benefited from this tax cut. Why does he vote for this? Why does he vote for internet companies to sell your private browsing data to the highest bidder without your consent? Why does he not vote for universal background checks in a country that loses 30,000 people to gun violence every year? Follow the money. In each of these cases, if you look at the Political Action Committee contributions to Senator Cruz, it helps to explain the reasons for his vote and how corrupted Congress has become. I don't take PAC money, not a dime. I always and only represent the people of Texas.
Congressman, that is your time. Senator Cruz, 60-second rebuttal.
You know, Congressman O'Rourke is fond of saying he doesn't take PAC money, but the truth is different. For example, the J Street PAC, which is a rabidly anti-Israel PAC, has raised over $160,000 for Congressman O'Rourke because of his many votes against the nation of Israel. Another example, he has a super PAC based up in Dallas that has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, is spending them on ads attacking me and my family. So when he says he doesn't take PAC money, he just lets others do it for him. But let me say more fundamentally, the reason people care about this is they care about who you're fighting for. Consistently, if you look at Congressman O'Rourke's record, every time there is a choice between left-wing national activists and the people of Texas, he goes with the left-wing national activists and he goes with the left-wing national donors. For example, we were